You booked it, episode 175. What's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining me today on You Booked It, the #1 podcast where you learn how to create a successful entertainment career. Every episode is a masterclass on how to move your career forward. Do you want to take your career to the next level? As a listener of this podcast, I am offering you the opportunity to work one-on-one with me to build the foundation of what you need to create a successful career in today's world. Regardless if you're starting out or you've been doing this a while, I've got you covered. Look, when I entered this industry, I went to the #1 school in the USA for musical theater, graduated with an insane skill set, and zero clue about how to actually make my skills a career. I lost years of momentum because of it. Do not let this happen to you. That's why I created this podcast. That's why I'm making you this offer to coach with me. If you're interested, simply tap the link in the description of this episode and let's chat. Okay, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Gabe Martinez. Are you ready for this, Gabe?
I am so ready. Let's get to it.
All right. Gabe is a career stage performer, trained from an early age by a family of musicians, cutting his teeth on stage with his father's jazz band and various other wedding and event bands. After graduating from Muhlenberg College with a degree in theater performance, he began a career as a cruise ship singer, and after 7 years at sea with several national tours and regional theater contracts mixed in, he and his wife Emily made the leap to land life. They currently reside in Weehawken, New Jersey with their pit bull Daisy, where Gabe is beginning a film and television career with the help of the good people at Hell's Kitchen Talent Agency. Gabe, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to try and strike the balance because I do a little bit of everything. So it can either be very broad or very granular. Just the quick bits are what you already mentioned, like a career performer in various different aspects of the entertainment world. I grew up with musicians singing around the house and caroling at Christmas, all that kind of stuff. When I was I think 11, I played my first gig with my father's band. But even up until then, they would always just drag me up on stage, make me sing. It was second nature growing up. In high school, I didn't have much of an interest in theater, if only because I'd only ever done straight music until then. But I got injured during the football season, and the theater director came around and heard me singing and poached me for Annie Get Your Gun that winter. And that's when my theater career got off the ground, and went to college for theater, played football there too. But again, an injury kind of knocked me out of it. So that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was able to go full bore into my performance studies. But since then, the career's just taken me wherever it's taken me. A lot of this and that, not a lot of straight acting per se, not a lot of studio recording as a musician. It's kind of been a little bit of everything, mostly cruise ships, some tours here and there, a lot of wedding gigs, that sort of thing. Right now, I suppose I'm doing what every other performer is doing and just trying to reevaluate my life and just try to find out who I am without working all the time. Although I'm sure you can relate to that, Dane. I think you've probably done as good a job as anybody I know at like finding something and just going at it and making something out of that. And I think the rest of us are just trying to figure it out at this point. So I suppose that brings us up to the present day. I think I've missed anything. How am I doing?
Yeah, beautiful. Great. Love the filling in the gap part. And let's dig into this first section here. And Gabe, look, I'm a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
Okay, I was back and forth on this one, but I decided to go back to my roots, and I picked a Miles Davis one for today. This is one that's always stuck with me. I'm sure I heard it from my dad when I was younger, but when I took a class on it in college, this was one of the ones that was drilled into us. Miles Davis said, "Don't play what's there, play what's not there." And as a jazz musician, this, of course, refers to improvisation and ad-libbing, and even on a more basic level, jazz was the first music to say, hey, let's bend up to a note or let's slide through a note. And up until then, it was all about hitting every note pitch perfect every single time. To me, in a broader sense, it becomes less about just full improvisation because I found out in college that I'm not a very good improv actor. I tried
Yeah.
out for an improv group, it did not go well. But I've taken it to mean in whatever you do in performance, you have to make it your own because there's plenty enough of big studios that kind of make the entertainment world go around just trying to repackage the same thing over and over again. And I suppose if you're lucky enough, you get a big payday off of something like that. But for the most part, all that you can do is try and just do something different. If I'm listening to music or watching something purely for my own enjoyment, what I'm looking for is something different. I don't want to hear you sing the song the same way the original did it. I could just listen to the record. What can you do that's different? And even if you're not some super creative mastermind, I know I'm not terribly creative, but in all things that I do, I try and bring something just a little different that will make someone perk up and say, oh, all right, I haven't heard that before. Don't play what's there, play what's not there. Miles Davis.
So good. And I really like how you expanded on that and what it means to you. I completely agree. It's really important to bring bring you to the table
And that's
every
also
time.
different for everybody, isn't it? Like that doesn't mean that you should just
Yeah.
go off script in the middle of a scene when you've rehearsed it one way. I know that my wife and I got together doing 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee a decade ago now. And I that was at a point in my early career that I couldn't help myself. And I was always throwing in little bits here and there. And God, man, she would get so mad at me. It's a wonder we ever got together. Man, the look she would give me on stage. So of course there's a space between that and just reading the lines and standing where you're told to stand. It means different things for everybody, and there are some projects that it's more appropriate for or less appropriate for. But I think as an artist, you must, to some degree, make it your own, do something with it that nobody else would have done.
For sure. I was interviewing someone, the name is not in my brain at the moment, but she was talking about choreography, and she said it's like coloring a photo, right? Like you have a coloring book, you have the outline, and that's the choreography. You have to stick within that confine, but you can do whatever the heck you want to fill it with life and uniqueness and color.
Right,
That's where you
right. And
bring
that's
you.
playing what's not there, right? You must also play most of what's there to some extent. So I suppose I'm quibbling on the actual text of the quote now, but of course it's whatever you take it to mean. And yeah, like I've played with I did a lot on cruise ships, and I'm not dragging anybody under the bus here, but when we would be in rehearsals for, say, when I was doing the house band, I would run up against it with people. There would be like, that's not how it is on the record. It's like, we're going to be playing in a bar where they have speakers. They can just play the record. We're a live band. Let's do something. Let's do something interesting. Let's make someone
Yeah.
sit up and take notice. We don't have to write a new song, but we can definitely put a hit there where there wasn't one, or do a key change, or any number of things. It can be the I think the scope of this is pretty wide in however you choose to interpret it.
For sure. And let's get into this next section here. And Gabe, of course, you're an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think that you'd agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry like you're having now takes a lot of
Absolutely.
dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do. There are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
This year in particular, I'm sure we're all finding out a lot about ourselves, but one of the things I found out is my career has actually been very, very smooth up until now. And I think that the story I was telling myself in my head was different. And
Mm.
I'm finding this year that I think I was very, very privileged up until now. I think I worked hard for everything I got, and I don't think I got anything I didn't deserve. I've moved pretty smoothly from one gig to the next for the past decade really since I left school. And it's only this year that I'm really coming up against, not to bring the whole tone down, but some real mental challenges. I'm kind of experiencing anxiety and depression for the first time in my life. So I suppose it's not terribly original to say that 2020 has been the biggest obstacle in my career, but rather I think
Yeah.
how that has challenged my own perceptions of myself. I think I also, from a mental health standpoint, was very blessed until now as well. It was never really anything I had to think about. And I was saying to somebody just the other day, I think that being in the business as long as I had been, and I'm sure you can attest to this, at a certain point, it becomes a job. And not that you don't appreciate it or don't enjoy doing it, but like you go up on stage and you dance and you sing and you sweat and the spotlights hit you and you change costumes and people get up and cheer. But we're really punching in and punching out of work when you've done it long enough and you've grown accustomed to it. My wife and I recently made the move to land and we left cruise ship life to find out what the next thing was. And I think that I never really realized just how much that meant to me. I think the story I told myself in my own head was, this is great. I'm good at it and I'm getting paid good money. And then when it's time to do something else, it'll be time to do something else. And I'm not really defined by performing and being on stage. And I think this year has shown me that that's not quite the case. So everyone's had their own challenges with 2020 and the pandemic and quarantine and lockdown, of course. But for me, it's been really about having to be stagnant in my career for the first time and confronting what that says about me. And it's been quite uncomfortable at times. I had sessions with a therapist for the first time, which was so helpful and which I can't recommend enough to anyone who's feeling any kind of way, who's feeling any kind of depression or anxiety. But yeah, that's been a huge challenge for me as a performer, not having anything to do and confronting what that means. And just as a person dealing with mental health issues for the first time.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think your experience is being shared by a lot of people. And I don't think you started by saying not to bring the mood down in addressing mental health, but I think it's so important to address mental health. And it's so good, I think, in these past few years that it's okay now. Like people are open about talking about mental health because it's actually a thing. It's always been a thing,
Right.
right? No one would talk about it though, and finally we are. And these are conversations we need to have. And there's plenty of people listening to this episode right now that it helps to hear you talk about that and be like, look, this is not this amazing year. It's hard, and for the first time, I'm really having to deal with these things. And you're not alone. And I think by expressing that only helps other people and helps listeners out there. So thank you so much for sharing all of
Sure, of
that.
course. And I think that's even another way in which I'm privileged. It didn't really become an issue in my life until such a time as it's become much less stigmatized and much more widely talked about. And
Hmm.
this year in particular, at a time when so many other people are also going through it, and there's a lot of commiseration and shared experience. So I am thankful for that. It's on the dark days, of course, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, as it were. But yeah, you try and keep perspective, and on the good days, you really think of how there's a lot of people that I have friends. I won't say any names, but I have a very good friend of mine who's really been helping me this year, who's been dealing with this stuff since high school, and I always took for granted, and I feel really really grateful that this has happened to me at such a time as I have resources to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living, or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
This is a good one. This is a tough one for me because it wasn't just something to say what I said, that I really have been doing this since before I can remember. The earliest VHS home videos of me are on a stage singing and dancing. So I chose one that it was the very first paying gig I had. For a few
Hmm.
years, I'd been just sitting in with my dad's band, and like I would do their bar gigs on Friday nights, and I would get free sodas as 11. It was a Dixieland jazz band, and I played trombone. and I sang whatever they told me to sing. The beginning of my career was very much, hey Gabe, stand here, sing this. And so
Yeah.
the first time my dad hired me for a gig and paid me cash at the end of it, like that was a big one for me because I always just grown up with my dad's band. So when he hired me for a gig, I'll never forget, there was a bump, big swing music and swing dance bump right in the early aughts. I don't know if you remember this. Bands like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and Squirrel Nut Zippers were
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
gangbusters, but only for like 2 years. It was wild. It was almost a blip on the radar. But Seton Hall University was like they had somebody coming in to teach swing dance lessons, and they hired my dad's band to play for the lessons and then for a dance party afterwards. And my dad hired me, and we actually sat down and rehearsed and wrote out charts. And I did the gig, and I remember like halfway through the gig, I turned breathless to our bass player, a guy called Timmy Metz. I'll never forget. And I said, Timmy, can you believe we're getting paid to do this? Because it had always been such a thing that I took for granted. And to think that I was getting paid for it. And even though I always knew that I was going to have a career in the arts from a very young age, that was a real rush to know that like this is something I could really like to have the cash in my hand and say, wow, this is something concrete that I can focus on. And Timmy looked at me and he said, buddy, they don't pay us to do this. They don't pay us to play music. They pay us to drive here 2 hours in short traffic and lug 200 pounds of gear and just try and plug all the amps into one outlet because nobody thought to bring a power cord and more than likely deal with some snotty event planner and then do it all again at the end and drive home and not crawl into bed until 3 in the morning. That's what they pay us for. We play music for free. And so that's one that's
Yeah.
really stuck with me. That was such a moment for me to be like, not only can I support myself and make a living doing this, but I still get to play music and sing for people and put us faces. And that's the gift, really. I'll do the rest of it happily if I can still do that. If I can still have that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that mind shift and that perspective. It's so good.
And I think you'll agree that when you've been like slogging away on a cruise ship contract and living in your little shoebox cabin and eating like bad mess food for months and months at a time, I think that could be the first thing to go. That's something I look back on frequently to remind myself. It's like, yes, that moment. You can always have that moment on this job if you take a breath and choose to reach for it.
Love that. And I want to piggyback on that real quick and talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Okay, I was down to two for this one as well, but I know that Emily told you about the cruise ship gig that we booked together, so I thought I would tell you about my very first cruise ship gig. I had graduated from school and I had been at home, living at home with my parents for, I suppose it was a year. It was about a year, and I had been working on jobs here and there. I got some seasonal holiday gigs that year. So I did some Christmas caroling and that sort of thing that year. So I was, picking along, and then I was still going 5 a.m., all those New York auditions. I was doing it every day and nothing had quite popped yet. And I remember one day I went in for Pirates of Penzance somewhere. I think maybe Ithaca or something. It was Ithaca doing Pirates of Penzance. It's the only thing that was there that day. I was like, am I really going to crawl out of bed at 4 in the morning to go stand in line for Pirates of Penzance at Ithaca? And I went and I did it. And I was in the waiting room and I walked out and I went into the audition room and realized that I was in the wrong room. I'd walked into Carnival Cruise Lines by accident. And I said, oh gosh, sorry, wrong room. The guy at the table said, we don't have anybody right now. You're here. Do you want to sing for us?
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I was on my first ship.
Get out of town.
That's
That is
that's
so
how it
cool.
went. I sang for 30 seconds. I did 16 counts of choreography. I was in and out of that room in under 4 minutes. And 2 weeks later, I was on my first ship. And it was just so serendipitous. And to think that that was the inciting incident for such a huge chunk of my career, and not just where I had most of my experience and made most of my money since then, but also where I learned the real nuts and bolts of what it takes to be a professional performer, because what they teach you in school is, of course, very important, but can only do so much. Like, you can only talk about beats and actions and motivation and all of that for so long, and you can only do so much, like, weird freeing movement work for so long. But to get on a cruise ship and day one of rehearsals have a very, very stern British lady choreographer saying, "What are you doing with your hands, darling? Put them at your sides. Don't move them. My God, please don't move those ridiculous hands." That's that you can only get that on the job, man.
And
And
which supervisor was that?
oh my God, I don't know if she'll be mad at me if I just love her so much. She's not mean. I thought she was. I was scared of her, but I love her so much. It was Ange Winters. God bless her. I hope listening. In fact, I'm
Yeah.
gonna say that because I've shared this with her as well. I've talked to her frankly about this because she's become a very close friend, and I always tell her, it's like, I was so wide-eyed when I got on that first contract, but there's been nothing so valuable in my life after all those years and months and semesters of, like, very heady performance classes as Angela Winters, God bless her, saying, "Stand here, do this with your hands," like the real nuts and bolts of it. And just to think that that all started because I walked into the wrong audition room and what might have happened otherwise
Yeah.
if it hadn't gone that way.
So good. And because you've had so much of your career that was on ships, can you just comment and talk about ship life a little bit? Your thoughts on it. How do you feel about ships as a market, as a place to perform as a singer or as a dancer? Is it a good place to perform? Is it something that you recommend to people? Because I think even today, there's a bit of a stigma still that surrounds cruise ship performing.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know if we'll ever get rid of that, right? But I think I would recommend it to anybody, of course. There's nothing but good that can come of it. I will say that it's not for everybody. You don't really know until you get there and give it a shot. I know people, well, obviously they're not there now, but I know some of my very best friends have been there since the early aughts and will be there until their knees fall out. It's their home, it's their life, and it's perfect for them. I was there. I left a couple of times, so my career was a bit broken up. Oh, all told, about 7 years on and off, something like 11 or 12 different ships, and I just by the end it had gotten rough. It had weighed on us, and I hesitate to say we stayed one contract too long because the last contract, again, so many great things happened, learned so much, met so many great people. But by the end of that last contract, it was really, really, really time. And that's just personal. We had used up all the cruise ship energy in our body, but it's just been so formative for me. And I know people that have had really bad experiences and left saying they'll never come back. And I'm so glad that didn't happen to me because there's no substitute for it, I don't think. And even me coming out of 4-year university, I was still very wide-eyed coming onto ships. But I know, and I'm sure you do too, like I think I remember you telling Emily that you started right out of school, and I knew all these, like, Aussie dancers coming right out of school to the ships just starting to travel the world. And it's just the most magical thing. It's so wonderful. And I think whereas by the end of my last contract, I was very embittered about it, I think I've arrived at a place where I can look back on it and say, man, that was the coolest thing. And I did it for so long and I made good money doing it. And I met some of my very, very best friends, some of the most loved people in my life. And honestly, the people I worked with on cruise ship are some of the most talented people I've ever met. So I suppose sort of hokey, maybe old school cruise ship performances that I could be like, yeah, I can see where the stereotype comes from, but man, so much of it is just such high quality. But man, it is round the clock work. And it is, if you're a singer, it's spending all day warming up your voice. If you're a dancer, it's all day working on your joints and working on your flexibility and making sure you're not getting injured. It's it's something that if I had a week to talk continuously about it, I still could not I could not make you understand what it's like unless you'd done it before. And it's just so wonderful. And I'm so thankful for my time there. We're right on the Hudson River now. Well, close to. We're a bit of a walk from the Hudson River, but like whenever I run down the river walk with my dog in the morning, not anymore, but before the pandemic, I would see cruise ships in Hell's Kitchen, and I would always have this little pang, like that part of my life is over. But man, if I could, if I could snap my fingers and just have one more night of shows and maybe one more day in not Cozumel, but nothing else is coming to mind. But like,
You don't want to go to No Name Bar again?
oh, No Name. I think I've gotten all I can out of No Name, man.
Enough Guidos?
Enough, man. But yeah, just it's there was periods of right after we left of, man, I'm so glad we got out and we'll never go back. And that was only because we'd been there so long and the last contract was really tough. And that quickly gave way to, oh my God, I really miss it. God, I think, are we going to go back? No, we're not going to go back. And over time, that's mellowed out into a place where we can really look back on it and say, that was the coolest thing, man. And I'm so glad we have those memories to reach for whenever we want them. And I think that's a real blessing.
For sure. And like you had said in the beginning, you said it really teaches you the nuts and bolts of performing. And it's not just theory and talking about it and getting up in a musical theater class and practicing it a couple times. It's you getting paid every night, getting on stage, doing it in front of live audiences with different styles of shows again and again. You get so many reps. You get to practice and hone things so much on ships.
So many reps. And you know what? If you tried something that didn't work, and even if you fell flat on your face, well, reset your costumes and touch up your makeup because you're going on again in 45 minutes.
Exactly right. And I think that right there, you can make so much progress as a performer on ships than I think probably in any market that I can really think of.
I think that if I had gotten super lucky right auditioning and like walked into an audition where I was exactly what they were looking for and booked something that started some sort of stage career for me right off the bat, I can't say that I ever would have gotten to where I think I am now, or well, a little out of practice now, but where I was at the peak of my last contract. Say, I don't think I ever could have gotten there in just terms of being a honed, focused, polished performer who knows what to do and does it in an economical way and can do it again and again and again. And I don't know how I could have gotten that anyplace else but cruise ships.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And it's a weird time. We're amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
I think that I definitely don't have my ear to the ground in terms of where the industry is going as much as some people I know. But for me, we mentioned it at the top. I've recently tried to dive into a sort of film and television commercial career. I was lucky enough to get a personal agent this summer. Our mutual friend Hannah Jane McMurray was very instrumental in hooking that up for me, and
Cool.
I'm so lucky it went down like that. But I currently have this wonderful agent who's constantly sending me self tapes. I got one. I literally got the notification about 5 minutes ago, so I'll be self taping tomorrow. And right now, I'm trying not to extrapolate too much off of that. The agents know what they're doing. They're going to send me the auditions. I'm going to do them. So hopefully there are some, a national commercial or an episode of Law and Order or something like that coming through sometime soon. I don't think that my future necessarily lies in pure film acting, but if that's one of the tools in my belt that can keep me working and bringing some money from time to time, I think that'd be great. That's what I'm focused mostly on now. However, in terms of project working on now, my wife and I are putting together a virtual benefit concert that's going up. Oh, I guess it will have already happened by the time this comes out, but that's all right. The last night of Hanukkah, which is also a week before Christmas, we are putting on a virtual benefit concert with some friends of ours. But the good news is it'll be live, but the video will stay up and the link to donate will stay up. So whenever this comes out, head over to my wife's YouTube channel, because I have one too, but I don't do anything on it. So I suppose, Dane, if you could drop that in the podcast description at some point, that would be helpful. It'll be there. I still don't know what we'll entitle it yet, but I'm sure it'll be on the front page of the YouTube channel. We have friends from all aspects of our career, from all stages of our career, contributing with their favorite holiday songs. We're doing it very old school, like you know how Bublé and Harry Connick do it nowadays, like an evening with friends, that sort of thing. A very old
Yeah.
school holiday benefit concert, and we will be donating all proceeds to the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which supports and defends the rights of Black trans Americans. And this is a cause that we feel strongly about. There's obviously everyone has felt the impact of the pandemic, but none more so in terms of minority groups than the Black trans community. So we are very happy to be partnering with the Marsha P. Johnson Institute and putting on this virtual benefit concert. We have everyone from Broadway stars to verified recording artists submitting, and up and comers, people that we went to school with. We have a few recent alumni rather, of Muhlenberg College coming out and contributing. It's going to be a very exciting and fun event. We're hosting it all from our home. We're singing a few songs, so that's kind of taking over all of our energy right now. There's been times when we're like, oh man, did we bite off more than we could chew? But I don't think we have. I think it's going to be great. So yes, if you visit Emily Martinez on YouTube, you will find our video there. Like I said, it'll be live on December 18th, and that's when the event is. But the video will stay up, and any donations we receive associated with that video will go to benefit the Marsha P. Johnson Institute.
Amazing. So cool. I will absolutely have to tune in for that.
I think we probably have some mutual friends working that one. I don't want to give too much away, but we have a couple good gets. We have some really good gets. Everyone's really wonderful. We really got the pick of all of our best, most talented friends this year. Everyone's going to be wonderful. We have some big names that people are going to be excited to see. Some Broadway folk, some world-class recording artists. We're so excited. It's going to be so much hard work, but once it goes up, it's going to be so great. So everyone, please tune in for that.
Very cool. And it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round.
Grease Lightning, yes.
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Right off the bat, a tough one. I've expounded on it, but I've kind of always known that I was going to have a career as a performer. But I will say that the social media aspect is something that, having come up as a performer when I was a kid, I'm still not quite very good at that. And I think a social media presence, I suppose it's never too late, but I always have a really tough time with that. And I think that's might be something that's held me back and is still holding me back. But the relatively new, to me, social media aspect of our industry is something that I have a real tough time with. And I think I really need to get on top of. We talked about it at the beginning, didn't we? About our websites.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, social media and just the tech side, the digital side of being a professional entertainer is a real thing. As much as you might hate it, it is what it is.
Very daunting sometimes, but yeah, we got to do it.
Beautiful. And the second question, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
When I was in college, I got to work with David Masonheimer, who, from being a Muhlen alumnus, he also played Javert on Broadway forever and ever. And getting to work with him was a real thrill because I saw him on Broadway as Javert when I was a kid. And so when I worked with him, one of the first things he told me was, Gabe, the only jobs I ever got that were worth getting, I got because someone knew me and knew that I was hardworking and good to work with and kind and a nice person. And I have found the same to be true. Apart from a lucky break here and there, for the most part, all the meaningful work I've gotten is because somebody knows me and likes me. So I've really taken that to heart, and I've tried with all my might to be as kind and easy to work with as possible in all my professional endeavors.
So good, such great advice. And I can relate. The vast majority of my career has come almost solely because of relationships and my work ethic and doing good work on a show and having integrity on a show. And then you know what? I get a call saying, hey, they'd like to see you for this show. And I get to go have a private audition. And
Oh gosh, that's always it's
and that's
always
how it
such a
works.
relief.
And that's such a blessing to have, but
And on the other side, we all know people that, for whatever reason, are not easy to work with. And as talented as they may be, if it comes down between two people of equal qualifications and one's easy to work with and one's not, you know exactly who the job is going to.
for sure, 100%. And the third question, what is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
This may seem like a really obvious one, but for the first time in years, I'm taking voice lessons again. And it seems really obvious, but guys, I promise if you've sung professionally for any length of time, you probably need voice lessons. And it always helps to go back to basics, kick the tires. It really gets you in touch with your voice. Even if you're more of a straight actor than a singer, getting in touch with your voice is something that so much of us in the professional realm take for granted because, we've been doing it a long time. We don't need voice lessons. Yeah, you do. We all need voice lessons.
Yes. And the fourth question, what is your best resource, whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast or piece of technology you've found is helping your career right now?
This is kind of a cheat because my agency does most of the work, but Actors Access has been a
Mm,
really, really great resource. That's where most of my auditions have been coming from. Again, super lucky that my agents take care of most of that, but highly recommend an Actors Access account. Um, I've been working with Backstage and Playbill for a long time, and they're both really great. But particularly in terms of commercial and film, Actors Access has been a really, really great um, database and resource for finding meaningful work, be it commercial, film, voiceover. There's just um, a lot of casting agencies will pull from there first. And kind of wish I'd gotten an account long ago, but highly recommend. It takes a bit of doing to get your account up and running, but a lot of work goes through there.
yeah, brilliant. Such a good resource. And the fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I think I keep it mostly the same, but I'm even going to double dip on what I talked about before. I think if I had known in college and right after what a huge resource social media was going to be in an actor and a performer's career, I would have established a thriving social media presence in so much as I was able much, much earlier, because now later in life, it feels so much daunting and it feels like such an uphill climb to at least establish yourself to such a point where you feel like you're not lagging behind. I think that's probably the only one because I think the path of my career probably couldn't have gone any different. There's no job I wish I'd taken that I didn't, or vice versa. Again, I think I'm very, very lucky for things to have gone the way they've gone.
Fantastic. And the last question, what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I'm sure everyone has some version of this, but whenever I get to have this conversation with someone who is younger than me, up and coming, just starting out, I always say, just do you. Find your lane, find your wheelhouse. I think so many young actors and performers spend so much time just like trimming the edges of their puzzle piece and like trying to jam themselves into somebody else's box. And a lot of college is just trying to shape you into someone that can get into an audition room. And I think a byproduct of that is thinking that, yep, everyone's got to look like this, and every girl's got to wear this dress, and every guy's got to have this haircut, and you got to sing this song, and you got to have a strong belt and ribbony falsetto, and you just have to be able to do everything exactly this way. And I didn't spend too much time on that, but that's some time that I wish I had back, because when I started getting meaningful work is when I shaved my head and got some tattoos and was like, okay, I'm just not going to be the classic leading man. That's not my lane. That's not my box. And you don't have to audition for every damn thing all the time. You don't have to be out there every morning. Find the ones that speak to you I suppose to a young performer, you're still trying to find out what that is. But while you are, don't kill yourself trying to turn yourself into something you're not. You are you and nobody else is you. Find what's good for you and just try not to lose your joy while you're doing it.
Wonderful advice. Everyone, please rewind that and listen to that again. So good. Thank you, Gabe. And to wrap up this interview, Gabe, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
I am at Gabriel Wings Official on Instagram. I'm also there on Twitter, but I'm never on Twitter. Thus my social media struggles. I did the national tour for Peter and the Starcatcher years ago, and it was my first gig after a few years on cruise ships. And I remember showing up at the first day of rehearsal and somebody congratulating me on a good audition. He was like, "Oh man, you must have really done good, because I know the other guy who was up for that role, and he has like 15,000 followers on Instagram or something." And I said, "What's Instagram?" So I finally have an Instagram. I'm trying to post. I'm trying to be active. Mostly right now, all I can do is plug my wife's YouTube channel, because that's where our next big project will be. I got nothing in the pot, but we're still just auditioning. We'll see what happens. You can find me on Facebook at Gabe Martinez. And at the beginning of quarantine, I was doing a lot of virtual concerts. And after the new year, I am resolved to get back to it again. So I will be doing those on Facebook. I found that to be a better platform than Instagram for live videos, just for my own preferences. So at Gabriel Wings Official on Instagram, just plain old Gabe Martinez on Facebook. And keep an eye out. One of my New Year's resolutions, even it'll be my first one ever, because I don't like New Year's resolutions, but I kind of need one this year. And it is to bolster my social media presence and try and really engage with people on the internet, because it doesn't look like things are going back to normal anytime soon. So needs must. And I'm ready to do it. I really am. I promise I'm going to do it.
Brilliant. And for everyone listening out there, I've put the links to everything Gabe just said into the description of this episode, including his wife Emily's YouTube page, so you can check that concert out. And also be sure to share this podcast with your fellow entertainers, coaches, teachers, arts and entertainment educators, and anyone you know aspiring to create a career in the entertainment industry. You Booked It is the #1 resource of expertise on how to create a successful entertainment career. It's integral to helping them succeed and helping you create a better, more fulfilling career in this insanely amazing industry. If you liked this episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Gabe, I am so glad we got connected. So glad Emily put us together. And thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a real treat. This podcast has been an automatic listen every time it drops. I've missed a few because there's so many of them. You're really cranking them out, man. But it's been a real joy. People that I know have been on it, people that I haven't know have been on it. I try not to miss an episode. So thanks so much for doing this and creating this resource for us.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure doing it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't miss an episode. Every guest drops more value and insight than any other resource out there. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a rating and review. Also, be sure to head over to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. All the best to you.